You have always suspected it. Take away the rules, the locks, the police, the small polite agreements that hold an ordinary day together, and people will finally show you what they really are. Underneath the costume of manners, something hungry is waiting. You have probably been taught that a single book proved this. Children, alone on an island, with no adults left to stop them, turning slowly into beasts. But the real answer is far stranger, because the most famous story about human savagery was written by a man who had every reason to lie to you. And the one time it actually happened in real life, the exact opposite occurred. Let us start with the book you think you know. In 1954, an English schoolteacher named William Golding published his first novel. A plane full of boys is shot down over the ocean during a war. The adults die. The children wash up on a tropical island, untouched, well-fed, free. At first it is a dream. There is fruit, there is warm water. There is no one to tell them what to do. They try to build a society. They choose a leader, a fair boy named Ralph. They agree on a simple rule. Whoever holds the conch shell gets to speak. They light a signal fire so a passing ship might save them. For a few golden pages, it works. And then it does not. A rival rises. A boy named Jack, who would rather hunt than keep the fire burning. The group splits. Face paint appears. The painted boys discover that a mask sets you free from being yourself. They kill a pig, and then they kill a boy, and then they hunt the last decent child across the island with sharpened sticks while the whole place burns behind them. They are rescued in the final moment by a naval officer who looks at these filthy, weeping savages and is faintly disappointed in them. That is the story, and here is the lesson almost everyone takes from it. Civilization is a thin coat of paint. Scratch it, and the animal underneath comes out. The boys did not learn cruelty on the island. They brought it with them because it was always there. It is a powerful idea. It feels true. But ask yourself a quiet question. Why does it feel so true? To answer that, you have to look at the man holding the pen. William Golding was not a cheerful observer of children. He taught boys for years at a grammar school in Salisbury, and he did not romance them. He once ran cruel little experiments on his own students, dividing them into groups and letting them fight for control, watching what happened. He served in the Royal Navy through the Second World War. He commanded a ship on D-Day. He saw up close what ordinary men with good manners were willing to do to one another once the killing started. So when Golding sat down to write, he was not making a neutral prediction about human nature. He was writing his own wound. He said as much. He believed that man produces evil the way a bee produces honey. The island was never an experiment. It was a confession. And that matters because a confession is not evidence. It tells you what one man believed after the worst years of his life. It does not tell you what would actually happen. So what would actually happen? For a long time, nobody knew. The book was fiction. You could not exactly maroon real children to find out. The questions stayed sealed inside the novel, and the novel quietly became fact in people's minds. Generations grew up certain that boys on an island would tear each other apart, because a brilliant writer had told them so. But it did happen. Once. For real. And almost no one knows the story. A Dutch historian named Rutger Bregman went looking for it. He wanted to know if there had ever been a true case, a real Lord of the Flies, and after a long hunt through old newspapers, he found one. In 1965, 6 boys from a strict boarding school in Tonga, in the South Pacific, grew bored of school and decided to sail to Fiji. They were aged 13 to 16. They borrowed a fishing boat without asking. That night, a storm broke the sail and snapped the rudder, and they drifted for 8 days with no food and almost no water, licking rain off leaves until they ran aground on a tiny uninhabited rock of an island called Atta. This is the setup. Boys, no adults, a deserted island. The exact conditions Golding imagined. And then they were stranded there, not for an afternoon, not for a week, but for 15 months. So what did they become? They built a commune. They made a pact to never quarrel, and when two of them did argue, the rule was simple. You go to opposite ends of the island, you cool off, and you come back and apologize. They split the work into teams of 2, rotating through garden, kitchen, and guard duty. They grew a vegetable patch. They kept chickens from a wild flock. They found the ruins of an old village and tamed it. And the fire. The thing the boys in the novel could not manage to keep alive. The failure that doomed them. These real boys kept burning for more than a year without ever letting it go out. They built a guitar from driftwood and wire to keep their spirits up. When one of them slipped down a cliff and broke his leg, the others climbed down, carried him back, set the bone, and did his chores until he healed. He walked again with barely a limp. When an Australian sea captain named Peter Warner finally spotted them and sailed close, he found 6 healthy, disciplined, gentle teenagers who had governed themselves with more grace than most nations manage. There were no painted savages. There was no dead boy. There was a working society of children who had decided, on the first day, that they would survive together or not at all. One island was invented by a grieving novelist. The other was real, and they ended in opposite worlds. Why is the made-up version the one you were taught, and the true version the one you never heard? Part of the answer is that the dark story sells. It always has. We are drawn to the idea that other people are one bad day away from monstrous, because it flatters the part of us that is afraid. But part of the answer is deeper, and science has been quietly rewriting it for years. For most of the last century, the experiments that made headlines were the cruel ones. You have heard of them. The prison study run by Philip Zimbardo at Stanford in 1971, where students playing guards supposedly turned brutal in days. It became the great proof that situation beats character, that anyone can become a torturer. Except that when researchers went back and examined the tapes and the records decades later, the study fell apart. The guards had been coached. They had been told to be tough. The most famous breakdown was partly performed. The experiment did not discover human cruelty. It manufactured it and then sold it as news. Now look at what honest research keeps finding instead. A primatologist named Frans de Waal spent his life watching our closest relatives, the chimpanzees and the bonobos, and what he documented was not endless war. It was reconciliation. After a fight, chimps kiss and embrace and groom each other back to peace. They console the loser. They share food. De Waal argued that empathy is not a fragile veneer painted over a savage core. It is the core. It is older than our species, written into us by millions of years of needing each other to survive. And that is the thing Golding got backward. He thought the rules were the cage holding the beast in. But the boys on Atta had almost no rules, and they did not become beasts. They built the rules themselves on the first day because cooperation was not the costume, it was the instinct. The hunger underneath the polite agreements turned out to be a hunger for each other. So why does the lie survive? Because believing the worst about strangers feels like wisdom. It feels like you have seen through something. When you assume the painted boys with the spears are the truth and the gentle commune is the exception, you think you are being realistic. You are not. You are repeating a traumatized man's nightmare as if it were a law of nature. And this is where the island reaches off the page and into your actual life. Every time you read a comment section and conclude that people are awful. Every time a story about a looting, a riot, A stranger behaving monstrously confirms what you already feared. You are doing what readers have done with Golding for 70 years. You are taking the rare, dramatic, painted face moment and mistaking it for the whole of human nature. While the 15 months of quiet cooperation, the shared fire, the set bone, the daily, ordinary kindness of billions of people goes unrecorded because it does not frighten you, and so it does not sell. Disasters, the real researchers tell us, almost never produce the war of all against all. They produce casseroles. They produce strangers pulling strangers from rubble. The savage island is the story we tell. The cooperative island is the one we keep living. So here is the harder, stranger truth, the one Golding could not bring himself to write. Take away the rules, the locks, the police, the small polite agreements that hold an ordinary day together, and most people do not show you a monster. They show you each other. And underneath the costume of manners, the hungry thing that was always waiting turns out to be the desire to build a fire together and keep it burning, and not let anyone face the dark alone. That is the lie you were told about human nature. And that is the Colophon.